Tomorrow, the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, will send articles of impeachment against President Trump to the United States Senate, launching the third trial of the U.S. president. The Republican-led Senate has signaled that it is likely to acquit him. Vice President Biden, if you're the nominee, is it going to be harder to run against President Trump if he's been acquitted and able to claim vindication, especially after what he said about your family?
It's irrelevant. There's no choice but for Nancy Pelosi and the House to move. He has, in fact, committed impeachable offenses. Whether the Senate makes that judgment or not, it's for them to decide. And by the way, I'm told that I say we have to unite the country. It's going to be harder after this trial. It may be, but look, I understand how these guys are, this Republican Party. They've gone after, savaged my surviving son, gone after me, told lies that your networks and others won't even carry on television because they're flat out lies. And I did my job. The question is whether or not he did his job, and he hasn't done his job. And so it doesn't really matter whether or not he's gone after me. I've got to be in a position that I think about the American people. I can't hold a grudge. I have to be able to not only fight, but also heal. And as President of the United States, that's what I will attempt to do, notwithstanding that there's going to be more division after he's defeated by me this next time.
Senator Klobuchar, you're going to be a juror in the trial in the Senate that's about to start. Do you worry President Trump will be emboldened by acquittal?
No. We have a constitutional duty to perform here. And when I look at what the issue is, it's whether or not we're going to be able to have witnesses. We've asked for only 4 people as witnesses. And if our Republican colleagues won't allow those witnesses, they may as well give the president a crown and a scepter. They may as well make him king. And last time I checked, our country was founded on this idea that we didn't want to be ruled by a king. And I think the best way to think about this trial and what we're facing in this election is a story of a man from Primgar, Iowa. His name was Joseph Welch. He came from humble beginnings, the son of immigrants. He became the Army Counsel, and he was the one that went to the Joseph McCarthy hearings. And when McCarthy was blacklisting people and going after people because of their political beliefs or supposed political beliefs, there was only one man. Everyone that was afraid, they're afraid of being blacklisted. Joseph Welch, he stood up and looked at McCarthy and said, "Have you no sense of decency, sir? Have you no sense of decency?" This is a decency check on our government. This is a patriotism check. Not only is this trial that, but also this election. And no matter if you agree with everyone here on the stage, I say this to Americans, you know this is a decency check on this president.
Mr. Steyer, you've spent millions and millions of dollars telling the American people that President Trump deserves to be impeached. Will it have been worth it if he's been impeached but not removed from office?
Well, Wolf, actually what I've done is to organize a petition drive of 8.5 million Americans to sign and say this president deserves to be impeached and removed from office. And those 8.5 million people have called their congresspeople, have emailed their congresspeople, and have actually dragged Washington, D.C. to see that, in fact, this is a question of right and wrong and not of political expediency. So if you ask me whether standing up for what's right in America, standing up for the American people and our safety, standing up for the Constitution, whether doing that and trying to bring the truth in front of the American people in televised hearings so we can decide what the truth is for ourselves. If you think that that isn't worth it, then you don't share the idea that I do about what the America's about. Standing up for what's right is always worth it, Wolf. And I will never back down from that.
Senator Warren, a Senate trial is expected to keep you in Washington in the weeks leading up to the Iowa caucuses here. How big of a problem is that for you as you're making your closing pitch to voters here?
Look, some things are more important than politics. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. It says that no one is above the law. That includes the President of the United States. If we have an impeachment trial, I will be there because it is my responsibility. But understand this, what that impeachment trial is going to show, once again, to the American people, and something we should all be talking about, is the corruption of this administration. That's what lies at the heart of it. It is about Donald Trump putting Donald Trump first, not the American people, not the interests of the United States of America, not even in helping Ukraine defend against Russia. It is about him helping himself. That is what we need to do to win this election. We need to draw that distinction and show that as Democrats, we're not going to be the people who are just out for the big corporations, people who want to help themselves, that we are going to be the party that is willing to fight on the side of the people. That's why we're here.
Let's turn now to the climate crisis. Here in Iowa, parts of the state remain underwater after record-breaking flooding began last spring, racking up an estimated $2 billion in damages. Today, many Iowans are still displaced from their homes. Mayor Buttigieg, you've talked about helping people move from areas at high risk of flooding. But what do you do about farms and factories that simply can't be moved?
That's why we have to fight climate change with such urgency. Climate change has come to America from coast to coast. We're seeing it in Iowa. We've seen it in historic floods in my community. I had to activate our emergency operations center for a once-in-a-millennium flood. Then 2 years later, had to do the same thing. In Australia, there are literally tornadoes made of fire taking place. This is no longer theoretical. This is no longer off in the future. We have got to act, yes, to adapt, to make sure our communities are more resilient, to make sure our economy is ready for the consequences that are going to happen one way or the other. But we also have to ensure that we don't allow this to get any worse. And if we get it right, farmers will be a huge part of the solution. We need to reach out to the very people who have sometimes been made to feel that accepting climate science would be a defeat for them, whether we're talking about farmers or industrial workers in my community, and make clear that we need to enlist them in the national project to do something about it.
To clarify, what do you do about farms and factories that cannot be relocated?
We are going to have to use federal funds to make sure that we are supporting those whose lives will inevitably be impacted further by the increased severity and the increased frequency. And by the way, that is happening to farms, that is happening to factories, and that disproportionately happens to Black and brown Americans, which is why equity and environmental justice have to be at the core of our climate plan.
Thank you, Mayor Buttigieg. Mr. Steyer, what's your response?
Look, what you're talking about is what's called managed retreat. It's basically saying we're going to have to move things because this crisis is out of control and it's unbelievably expensive. And of course, we're going to come to the rescue of Americans who are in trouble. But this is why climate is my #1 priority. And I'm still shocked that I'm the only person on this stage who will say this. I would declare a state of emergency on day 1 on climate. I would do it from the standpoint of environmental justice and make sure we go to the Black and brown communities where you can't breathe the air or drink the water that comes out of the tap safely. But I also know this. We're going to create millions of good-paying union jobs across this country. It's going to be the biggest job program in American history. So I know we have to do it, I know we can do it, and I know that we can do it in a way that makes us healthier, that makes us better paid, and is more just. But the truth of the matter is, we're going to have to do it, and we're going to have to make the whole world come along with us, and it's going to have to be priority 1.
Mr. Steyer, to clarify, you say you're the climate change candidate, but you made your $1.6 billion in part by investing in coal, oil, and gas. So are you the right messenger on this topic?
I absolutely am. Look, we invested in every part of the economy, and over 10 years ago, I realized that there was something going on that had to do with fossil fuels that we had to change. So I divested from fossil fuels. I took the giving pledge to give most of my money away while I'm alive. And for 12 years, I've been fighting the climate crisis. I've beat oil companies in terms of clean air laws. I've stopped fossil fuel plants in Oxnard, California. I fought the Keystone Pipeline. I have a history of over a decade of leading the climate fight successfully.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer.
So actually, yes, I am the person here who has the chops and the history that says, I'll make it priority 1 because I've been doing it for a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. Senator Warren,
Yes.
President Trump is rolling back major environmental rules to allow pipelines and other major infrastructure projects to be built without strict environmental review. Will you restore those protections and in a way that the next president can't overturn?
Yes, Climate change threatens every living thing on this planet, and the urgency of the moment cannot be overstated. I will do everything a president can do all by herself on the first day. I will roll back the environmental changes that Donald Trump is putting in place. I will stop all new drilling and mining on federal lands and offshore drilling. That'll help us get in the right directions. I'll bring in the farmers. Farmers can be part of the climate solution. We should see this, though, for the problem it is. Mr. Steyer talks about it being problem number one. Understand this. We have known about this climate crisis for decades. Back in the 1990s, we were calling it global warming, but we knew what it was. Democrats and Republicans back then were working together because no one wanted a problem. But you know what happened? The industry came in and said, we can make big money if we keep them divided and make no change. Priority number one has to be taking back our government from the corruption. That is the only way we will make progress on climate, on gun safety, on health care, on
Thank you,
all
Senator
of
Warren.
the issues that
Senator
matter to us.
Klobuchar. Some of your competitors on this stage have called for an all-out ban on fracking. You haven't. Why not?
Well, first of all, I would note that I have 100% rating from the League of Conservation Voters, and that is because I have stood tall on every issue that we have talked about up here when it comes to this administration, this Trump administration, trying to reverse environmental protections. I think it is going to lead to so many problems, and one thing that hasn't been raised, by the way, is the rules on methane, which is actually one of the most environmentally dangerous hazards that they have recently embarked on, and I would bring those rules back as well as a number of other ones. When it comes to the issue of fracking, I actually see natural gas as a transition fuel. It's a transition fuel to where we get to carbon neutral. Nearly every one of us has a plan that is very similar, and that is to get to carbon neutral by 2045 to 2050, to get to, by 2030, do a 45% reduction. And I want to add one thing that no one's really answered. When we do this, we have to make sure that we make people whole. And when we put a tax on carbon, which we will do either through cap and trade or through a renewable electricity standard or through a fee on carbon, then we have to make sure the money goes back to the people that will be hurt by it.
Thank you, Senator
with their energy
Klobuchar.
bills and to bring jobs to areas that will lose jobs.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you. Let's be clear. If we as a nation do not transform our energy system away from fossil fuel, not by 2050, not by 2040, but unless we lead the world right now, not easy stuff, the planet we are leaving our kids will be uninhabitable and unhealthy. We are seeing Australia burning. We saw California burning. The drought here in Iowa is going to make it harder for farmers to produce the food that we need. This is, of course, a national crisis. I've introduced legislation to indicate it's a national crisis. We have got to take on the fossil fuel industry and all of their lies and tell them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. That's what the Green New Deal does. That's what my legislation does. And that is what we have to do.
Vice President Biden, your response.
My response is, back in 1986, I introduced the first climate change bill, and check PolitiFacts, they said it was a game changer. I've been fighting this for a long time. I headed up the Recovery Act, which put more money into moving away from fossil fuels to solar and wind energy than ever has occurred in the history of America. Look, what we have to do is we have to act right away. And the way we act right away is immediately, if I'm elected president, I'll reinstate all the mileage standards that existed in our administration, which were taken down. That's 12 billion gallons of gasoline, barrels of gasoline to be saved immediately. And with regard to those folks who, in fact, are going to be victimized by what's already happened, We should be investing in infrastructure that raises roads, makes sure that we're in a position where we have that every new highway built is a green highway, having 550,000 charging stations. We can create, and this is where I agree with Tom, we can create millions of good-paying jobs. We're the only country in the world that's ever taken great crisis and turned it into great opportunity. And one of the ways to do it is with farmers here in Iowa by making them the first group in the world to get to net zero emissions by paying them for planting and absorbing carbon in their fields right away. There's more to say, but I know
a key part of your mission in this primary is going to be to prove to Democratic voters that you're strong enough to take on Donald Trump. Each of you face unique challenges in doing that. Mayor Buttigieg, you say you've had trouble earning the support of black voters because you're unknown, but you've been campaigning for a year now, and polling shows you with next to no black support that you'll need in order to beat Donald Trump. Is it possible that black voters have gotten to know you and have simply decided to choose another candidate?
The black voters who know me best are supporting me. It's why I have the most support in South Bend. It's why among elected black officials in my community who have gotten into this race, by far most of them are supporting me. And now, nationally, I am proud that my campaign is co-chaired by a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and to have support right here in Iowa from some of the most recognizable black elected leaders, from Mayor Hart of Waterloo to former Representative Berry in Black Hawk County. Now, the biggest mistake we could make is to take black votes for granted, and I never will. The reason I have the support I do is not because any voter thinks that I'm perfect. It's because of the work that we have done facing some of the toughest issues that communities can. Not from the luxury of a debate or a television panel or a committee room, but on the ground. Issues from poverty to justice in policing. And I'm proud to say we've been nationally recognized for our work as a race-informed city on delivering greater economic justice, that we have reduced use of force by leading the region in transparency around the use of force in policing. Of course, there is a much longer way to go in my community and around the country, but I will be a president whose personal commitment is to continue doing this work.
Senator Sanders, you call yourself a democratic socialist, but more than 2/3 of voters say they are not enthusiastic about voting for a socialist. Doesn't that put your chances of beating Donald Trump at risk?
Nope, not at all. And that is because the campaign that we are going to run will expose the fraudulency of who Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is corrupt, he is a pathological liar, and he is a fraud. Now, when Trump talks about socialism, what he talks about is giving hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks and subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. Donald Trump is a businessman, received $800 million in tax breaks and subsidies to build luxury housing. My democratic socialism says healthcare is a human right. We're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We're going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. We're going to have a Green New Deal and create up to $20 million saving the planet for our children and our grandchildren. We are going to take on the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance company. That is what democratic socialism is about, and that will win this election.
Mr. Steyer, you've spent more than $100 million of your own dollars on television ads. How do you convince voters that you're more than just your money?
Look, we know how Donald Trump is going to run for president. He's going to run on the economy. He's already told Americans last month in Florida, you don't like me and I don't like you, but you're all going to vote for me because the Democrats are going to destroy the economy in 15 minutes if they get in control. So let's be clear. I started a business by myself in one room. I didn't inherit a penny from my parents. I spent 30 years building that business into a multi-billion-dollar international business. Then I walked away from it and took the Giving Pledge and started organizing coalitions of ordinary Americans to take on unchecked corporate power. But whoever is going to beat Mr. Trump is going to have to beat him on the economy, and I have the experience and the expertise to show that he's a fake there and a fraud. Look, Mayor Pete has 3 years as an analyst at McKinsey. I have 30 years of international business experience. I can beat Trump on the economy. We're going to have to beat him on the economy. And I look forward to taking him down in the fall on the debate stage.
Mayor Buttigieg.
Now, you demoted me. I was actually an associate, but that's okay. It was not the biggest part of my career, but I am ready to take on this president on the economy because I am from the exact kind of industrial Midwestern community that he pretends to speak to and has proven to turn his back on, and guided that community through a historic transformation when at the beginning of the decade I took office, we were described as a dying city. I'm ready to take on Donald Trump because when he gets to the tough talk and the chest thumping, he'll have to stand next to an American war veteran and explain how he pretended bone spurs made him ineligible to serve. And if he keeps trying to use religion, if a guy like Donald Trump keeps trying to use religion to somehow recruit Christianity into the GOP, I will be standing there not afraid to talk about a different way to answer the call of faith and insist that God does not belong to a political party. I am ready to take on this president on every front.
Senator Klobuchar, you're pitching yourself as a practical candidate who can get things done. And even tonight, you've dismissed some of the ideas that are offered in this primary as pipe dreams. How are you going to inspire Democratic voters with a message of pragmatism?
Our voters, actually all Americans, have seen now a number of years of a guy that has, I think, told over 15,000 lies. He is someone that literally has a rap sheet of divisive rhetoric. And I think what Americans want is something different. I am going to be able to stand across from him on that debate stage and say to my friends in Iowa, the Midwest is not flyover country for me. I live here. I'm going to be able to look at him and say, you've treated these workers and farmers like poker chips. For me, these are my friends and these are my neighbors. I'm going to be able to look at him and say, you know what? You got $413 million over the course of your career. That's how you built your fortune. And what I'm going to say is this. My grandpa worked 1,500 feet underground in the iron ore mine, saved money in a coffee can in the basement to send my dad to a 2-year community college. That's my family trust. And when you have been given an opportunity like that, you go into the world not with a sense of entitlement, Donald Trump, but with a sense of obligation.
Senator Warren, what do you say to voters who like your policies, but they're worried they will scare away swing voters you need to win this race in November?
So I was born and raised in Oklahoma. I have 3 older brothers who are all retired, who are all back there still. And 2 of my 3 brothers are Republicans. And sure, there are a lot of things we disagree on, and we can take dark corners and do the Democratic Republican talking points. But the truth is, there's a whole lot we agree on. You know, my brothers are just furious over Chevron and Eli Lilly and Amazon, that our giant corporations make billions of dollars in taxes, make billions of dollars in profits and pay nothing in taxes. My brother said, I don't get this. I have to pay my taxes. Somebody has to keep the roads paved and the schools open and pay for our defense. They understand that we have an America right now that's working great for those at the top. It's just not working for anyone else. We have a chance to unite as Democrats, but also with independents and Republicans who are sick of living in a country that's working great for the politicians that are taking the money. It's working great for the lobbyists. It's working great for the corporate executives. It's just not working for everyone else. I'm building the grassroots movement, leading the fight. We're going to make this America work for everyone else. That is how we're going to beat Donald Trump.
Vice President Biden, the eventual nominee will face President Trump, who has no problem mocking people, using insulting nicknames, slinging mud, and telling lies. The debate against him will make tonight's debate look like child's play. Are you prepared for that?
I am prepared for that. Look, I've been the object of his affection now more than anybody else in this state. I've taken all the hits he can deliver, and I'm getting better in the polls, my going up. And by the way, I have overwhelming support from the African American community. Overwhelming, more than everybody else in this operation, number one. Number two, working class people where I come from in Pennsylvania and the places I come from in Delaware, I have great support. I have support across the board. And I'm not worried about taking on Donald Trump at all. And with regard to the economy, I can hardly wait to have that debate with him. Where I come from, the neighborhoods I come from, they're in real trouble. Working class people and middle class people. When the middle class does well, working class has a way up and the wealthy do well. But what's happening now? They're being clobbered. They're being killed. They now have in a situation where if the vast majority believe their children will never reach the stage that they've reached in economic security. I love that debate because the American public is getting clobbered. The wealthy are the only ones doing well, period. I'm looking forward to the economic debate.
We'll be right back with more from CNN's Democratic President.